He took me home to Carolyn's house. Where's Luann, man? The whore ran off. Carolyn was a relief after Luann, a well-bred, polite young woman, and she was aware of the fact that the $18 Neal had sent her was mine. I relaxed a few days in her house. From her living room window in the wooden tenement on Liberty Street, you could see all of San Francisco burning green and red in the rainy night. Neal did the most ridiculous thing of his career the few days I was there. He got a job demonstrating a new kind of pressure cooker in the kitchens of homes. The salesman gave him piles of samples and pamphlets. And the first day, Neal was a hurricane of energy. I drove him all over town as we made appointments. The idea was to get invited socially to a dinner party and then leap up and start demonstrating the pressure cooker. Man, cried Neal excitedly, this is even crazier than the time I worked for Sinex. Sinex sold encyclopedias in Oakland. Nobody could turn him down. He made long speeches, he jumped up and down, he laughed, he cried. One time we broke into an Okie house where everybody was getting ready to go to a funeral. Sinex got down on his knees and prayed for the deliverance of the deceased soul. All the Okies started crying. He sold a complete set of encyclopedias. He was the maddest guy in the world. I wonder where he is. We need to get next to pretty young daughters and feel him up in the kitchen. This afternoon, I had the goingest housewife in her little kitchen. Arm around her, demonstrating. Wow. Keep it up, Neal, I said. Maybe someday you'll be mayor of San Francisco. He had the whole cookpot spiel worked out. He practiced on Carolyn and I in the evenings, and one morning he stood naked, looking at all of San Francisco out the window as the sun came up. He looked like someday he'd be the pagan mayor of San Francisco, but his energies ran out. One rainy afternoon, the salesman came around to find what Neal was doing. Neal was sprawled on the couch. Have you been trying to sell these? No, said Neal. I have another job coming up. Well, what are you going to do about all these samples? I don't know. In a dead silence, the salesman gathered up his sad pots and left. I was sick and tired of everything, and so was Neal. But one night, we suddenly went mad together again. We went to see Sam Gaylord in a little Frisco nightclub. And Slim Gaylord. Slim Gaylord. He's a tall, thin guy with big sad eyes who's always saying, Rider-Ronin, how about a little bourbon-a-ronin? In Frisco, great eager crowds of young semi-intellectuals sit at his feet, listen to him on piano, guitar, and bongo drums. And when he gets warmed up, he takes off his shirt and undershirt and really goes. He does and says anything that comes into his head. He'll sing, cement mixer, put it, which he wrote. And suddenly slow down the beat and brood over his bongos with fingertips barely tapping the skin as everybody leans forward breathlessly to hear. You think he'll do this for a minute or so, but he goes right on for as long as an hour, making an imperceptible little noise, like Al Hinkle did, with the tip of his fingernails, getting smaller and smaller all the time, till you can't hear it anymore, and sounds of traffic come in the open door. Then he slowly gets up and takes the mic and says, very slowly, Great-a-Roni, fine-a-Roni, hello-Roni, bourbon-a-Roni, all-a-Roni. How are the boys in the front row making out with their girls? Roni. He keeps this up for like 15 minutes. His voice getting softer, until you can't hear. His great sad eyes scan the audience. Neal stands back saying, God, yes! And clasping his hands in prayer and sweating, Jack, Slim knows time. He knows time. Slim sits down at the piano and hits 2 notes, 2 C's, and 2 more, and 2. And suddenly the big burly bass player wakes up from a tea reverie and realizes Slim is playing C jam blues, and he slugs his big forefinger on the string with the big booming beat. Begins and everybody starts rocking, and Slim looks just as sad as ever, and they blow jazz for a half an hour, and then Slim goes mad and grabs the bongos and plays tremendous rapid Cuban beats and yells crazy things in Spanish and Arabic and Peruvian dialect and Mayan, in every language he knows, and he knows innumerable languages. Finally, the set is over. Each set takes 2 hours. Slim Gaylord goes and stands against a post looking sadly over everybody's head as people come and talk to him. A bourbon is slipped into his hand. Bourbon-a-Roni, thank you, Aroni. Nobody knows where Slim Gaylord is. Neal once had a dream that he was having a baby and his belly was all bloated up blue, and he lay on the grass of a California hospital under a tree with a group of colored men. There was Slim Gaylord. Neal turned despairing eyes to him. Slim said, "There you go, Roney." Now Neal approached him. He approached his God. He thought Slim was God. He shuffled and bowed in front of him and asked him to join us. "Right-o, Roney," says Slim. He'll join anybody, but he won't guarantee to be there with you in spirit. Neal got a table, bought drinks, sat stiffly in front of Slim. Slim dreamed over his head. Not a word was spoken. Every time Slim said "Aroni," Neal said, "Yes, I sat there with these two madmen." Nothing happened. To Slim Gaylord, the whole world was just one big Aroni. That same night, I dug Lampshade on Fillmore and Gary. Lampshade is a crazy big colored guy who comes staggering into musical San Francisco saloons with a big coat, hat, and scarf, and jumps on the bandstand and starts singing, and the veins pop in his forehead, and he heaves back, and he blows big foghorn blues out of every muscle in his soul, and he yells at people while he's singing. He drinks like a fish. His voice booms over everything. He grimaces, he writhes, he does everything. He came over to our table and leaned over us and said, "Yes!" And then he staggered out to the street to hit another saloon. Then there's Connie Jordan, a madman who sings and flips his arms and ends up splashing sweat on everyone, kicking over the mic and screaming like a woman, and you see him late at night, exhausted, listening to wild jazz sessions at Jackson's Hole, with big round eyes and limp shoulders, a big stare into the space, and a drink right in front of him. I never saw such crazy musicians. Everybody in Frisco blew. It was the end of the continent. They didn't give a damn. That summer, I was to see much more of it until the very walls shuddered and cracked. Neal and I goofed around San Francisco in this manner until I got my next GI check and got ready to go back home. And what I accomplished by coming to San Francisco, I do not know. Carolyn wanted me to leave. Neal didn't care one way or the other. I bought a loaf of bread and meats and made myself 10 sandwiches to cross the country with again. They were all going to go rotten on me by the time I got to Dakota. The last night, Neal went mad. Found Luann somewhere downtown, and we got in the car and drove all over to Richmond, across the bay, hitting all the jazz shacks and the oil flats. Luann went to sit down, and a big old guy pulled up his chair out from under her. The gals approached her in the John with propositions. I was approached too. Neal was sweating all around. It was the end. I wanted to get out. At dawn, I got on my New York bus, and I said goodbye to Neal and Luann. They wanted some of my sandwiches. I told them no. It was a sullen moment. We were all thinking we'd never see each other again, and we didn't care. And that was that.